Hello, welcome to the Self-Learning Podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Block 8, Issues of Modernity. Unit 29, Theories of Modernization and Modernity. The theories of modernization inform us about how the various parts of the world developed into industrial powers. The approaches or theories that describe and analyze how and why this happened are the subject of the initial part of this lesson. Thereafter, we will turn to modernity and see how our presentation and analysis of the same helps our understanding of modern Western society, as also the social processes witnessed in some Asian societies. Thus, modernization is an outcome of various social processes. The major events in this historical development began after the World War II, and these include the emergence of America as a superpower in the globe, which had the result of trying to stem the rise of communalism. To bring about this aim of containment, the US invested greatly in strengthening of the economic base of certain countries, including Western Europe, South Korea, and Japan. Modernization also stems from the growth of the communist movement in China, Vietnam, Soviet Union, now no longer existing as a communist bloc, and Cuba. The third of these processes include the factors of decolonization in Asia and Africa, and the termination of colonies controlled by European powers. At this point of time, the former colonies had to face the challenge of adopting some appropriate model of growth. In this, they were assisted and helped by the US, which sent vast teams of social scientists to study the ground situation in the new nation states. The idea behind this move of the US was to see how capitalist ideologies could be used in the economic growth of these nations, most of whom were poor due to the long period of colonization, which had greatly depleted their resources and had been deeply exploited. This included the export of raw materials, which were turned into products and commodities and re-exported to the colonies so as to make great economic profits. This strategy of supplanting capitalism and capitalist ideologies was no doubt also an attempt to the influence of communist ideology and to destroy it over a period of time. There is thus a great dimension of political maneuver and ideology which is involved in the process of modernization. Thus, the scholars in all fields of social science studied these societies, and their findings began to be published soon after the World War II. The main tools of analysis and of subsequent published included primarily an evolutionary theory and secondly the functionalist theory. Let us describe these approaches now so that the overall process of modernization begins to be clear. Thus, the evolutionary theory and the theorists pointed out the several factors which comprised the viewpoint of this approach, found social charge in these societies to be in a linear progression, going from primitive to complex society. This was held to be so in all societies. Again, this theory and the theorists associated with it held that such linear progress of societies was leading to a better world and represented the good of humanity and civilization at large. Further, social change was envisioned as a gradual occurrence and was disassociated from any sudden and violent chain of events, for example, revolution. Change was slow and steady, and not sudden and violent as the communist ideology upheld. This slow change, considering the situation of modern societies, was felt to take enormous spans of time, running into centuries, not just decades. Thus, the functionalist theorist, foremost of whom was Parsons, built up various tenets to promote its viewpoint, the main ones being the analogy of society as being an organism which had various interrelated segments in societal institutions. In this organismic identity, each of the various institutions performed a particular part which contributed to the whole. This theory propagated that there were four main functions which the institutions performed. These were the functions of adaptation to the environment performed by the capitalist economic system. Then was the function of goal attainment, which was a government function, a function which encompassed liberal aims. Next came the function of integration performed by legal and religious institutions, specifically the Christian religion. Finally, there is the latency function performed by the family and by educational institutions. Now, let us wind up the session and take rest. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the self learning podcast.